Hi, my name is Chris Parkhurst. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I'm also the host of the Documentary Life podcast, a show that spans 140 episodes, has been downloaded in over 135 countries, and I've been producing for about 5 years. I decided to put each and every episode up here onto YouTube to sort of expand the audience, and as we say in the show, maybe inspire and inform some more doc filmmakers, hopefully like yourself. In the episodes, you may find some older, maybe outdated URLs, in particular any of the documentary filmmaking courses that we do offer online. If you have any questions about the URLs, simply look in the show notes on this page, here on this YouTube page, and that'll be able to take you where you need to go to. Other than that, I hope you enjoy the show, and it's great to have another listener to the Documentary Life. Have a great day. Microphone check, 1, 2. XCC, hello and welcome. XCC, hello and welcome.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. There we go, rolling.
There are a lot of people willing to, help you push their agenda and their cause, and you lose creative control. And I didn't get into this to be a dancing monkey. You know what I mean? Like I needed to do what I needed to do, and this is my dharma. Like I just because I'm not in the monastery doesn't mean I'm not doing that work. We have a tremendous responsibility as filmmakers to advocate for beauty and truth in a way that captures human spirit and gets them, out of this polarity of like red team, blue team, or whatever the hell game they're playing, and sees people for who they are, sees situations for who they are.
Hello and welcome to the Documentary Life, a show that sets out to inspire and inform you on how to best live and lead your own documentary life. I am your host, Chris G. Parkhurst, and this is episode number 82. And it is brought to you by Barong Films, proud creators of documentary film, the Documentary Life podcast, and the Documentary Academy, our industry-changing A to Z documentary filmmaking program that will transform you into the documentary filmmaker that you've always wanted to be. Find out more at thedocumentarylife.com/academy. As any of you who have been listening to the show for a bit now would know, one of the unique things about our program is that we don't simply focus on the how-to aspects of documentary filmmaking. Yes, of course, it is a substantial part of what we talk about here on the Documentary Life, but as the name suggests, we also discuss the lifestyle aspects associated with living one's doc life. It's always been important to me that this podcast give a much more holistic look at not only how we make our documentary films, but how we make our documentary lives as well. And today's guest may in fact embody that more than anyone we've had on the program to date. His name is Pedram Shojai. I should say Dr. Pedram Shojai, as he has a very significant background in Oriental medicine. He is a man who spent decades meditating, practicing Tai Chi, Kung Fu, and Qigong. He is the man behind well.org and the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Urban Monk. He is also busy making documentary films that he believes will create some positive, real, and actionable change in our world. In short, we'll be speaking to a man who is most certainly doing his part to make the world a better place to live in. And as a sort of primer for today's shared conversation with an industry guest, I'm going to provide you with 5 ways to increase your filmmaking creativity. Lots of exciting and very appropriate stuff on tap for today's episode. All of this is coming up next on The Documentary Life. So let's go ahead and jump right into 5 ways to increase your filmmaking creativity. Number 1, get outside. Yeah, like seriously, get the hell away from your laptop, mobile device, iPad, whatever. Getting outside can certainly mean just getting outside your house or apartment and taking a stroll down the park blocks. If you happen to live in a city, that's fine. At least you're out actually engaging with the world as opposed to interacting with it, say in a virtual sense. Talking to an actual human being instead of their avatar is certainly a helpful thing. But I'm actually more talking about getting out into nature, getting in touch with your roots, like as in trees or a mountain. And not to get all Buddha on you, but try sitting down by a stream and watching the river flow. Isn't that a Dylan song, actually? Watching the river flow. The idea here is to disconnect from all of that, I don't know, intense writing or photo touch-ups or editing or whatever you may be doing in the dark on your laptop and stepping outside to recharge a little bit. Breathe in the air. Now that's Pink Floyd, right? Wow, the musical references are really flying today. I want you to step back from all of the hard work that you've been putting in. And by the way, this can really be important for the editors amongst us who are not unaccustomed to, say, spending upwards of 12 to 15 hours a day in front of our computers. I want you to step back from all of the hard work and just get out into the wilderness and do anything but be in front of your computer or camera's monitor. Recharge and re-energize those creative juices. That's what we're looking to do here. Number 2, find something good. Years ago, when I was first doing documentary work in Cambodia, we were spending 6 months in the countryside filming people digging up old UXOs and mortars and bombs, and they were attempting to dismantle the metal from the TNT in order to sell on to the scrap metal trade. At the time, Cambodia had the highest per capita amputee rate in the world, which meant 1 out of about every 7 people were missing a limb. They were long days in the sweltering Cambodian sun, and they were 6 days a week. Often I was feeling sick from exhaustion or the desperate things that I was seeing and hearing about every day. I remember well an old dear friend. She wrote me an email and demanded that I do something for her, although it was really do something for myself. She wanted me to take a mental picture of something, anything that I saw in the day that made me smile or brought some sort of lightness, regardless of size or duration. And she wanted me to write that one thing down in this little book that I was carrying around. So I started to do this every day. One day it could be a pretty little flower on the side of the road. It might be a pleasant exchange I had with a sugarcane seller or the smell of a cooking fire. The many incredible, wondrous shades of green of a rice field. And I wrote these things down at the end of each day. And I have to say that it always brought me back to a positive, lighter state of being, often after having experienced another of those, the aforementioned long or heavy days. And I might implore you to do the same, especially certainly if you happen to be immersed in a doc project that might also deal in heavier subject matter. Write down something positive that you experience. Nowadays, you could even whip out your mobile device and snap a quick pic if it's something that you see. However you do this, the idea is to document your little moment. It can be a nice reminder, that there are beautiful things out there in the world and that they too should be celebrated every single day. Number 3, engage with some like-minded people. Too often, we as doc filmmakers, we can lead somewhat solitary existences. We've mentioned this many times here on the program, that even within the film industry, we doc filmmakers, while we might be the most in need of finances or resources or some sort of connectivity, we tend to be the ones that might be the least connected in the industry. And so it's important for us to do things, i.e., get out there and interact with other people who are either doing what we do or at least are doing something creative in their own lives. We need this as human beings. We need this connectivity. Actually at the time of the recording of this particular show, we're only about 10 days from attending Podcast Movement 2018 in Philadelphia. It's the biggest industry gathering of its kind in the US. We went to our first Podcast Movement last year, and it was a revelation. To be amongst a crowd of hundreds of people who were also producing podcasts, talking podcasts, living and breathing podcasts, and who we didn't actually have to explain what a podcast was and why we were doing one. Well, yeah, it was a breath of fresh air, to say the least. And it's the same with us doc filmmakers. We need to be engaging with other doc filmmakers, having conversations about things like fundraising, distribution, fiscal sponsorships, or how the hell we live our creative lives when we're also responsible for providing for a family of 4. A lot of us may not live in LA, London, or New York. In fact, probably most of you doc lifers don't. And so we may have to go a little out of our way to meet up with other filmmakers or creatives. We may have to listen to podcasts like this one. We may need to get hooked up with groups online. But it is important that we do these things, and fairly regularly. We need to feel connected to other people who are doing what we also do and are living in the way that we are living. Number 4, ask for feedback. Sometimes we can get so stuck in the films that we're making that we forget to share any of the process with the world. And the more that we're the only people experiencing our films while we're making them, the more possibility of becoming so attached to what we're seeing, and this is, again, especially the case when we're editing our films, that we start to lose some perspective on the projects. I can give you an example of this. Years ago, when I was working on Journey to Kathmandu, I'd been editing the film for nearly 3 years, maybe even closer to 4. Now, there were large gaps between when I was able to work on it, but nonetheless, I'd spent a ton of time cutting the film. But I didn't ever seem to get any closer to being able to, host a rough cut viewing of the film. Finally, one day after being increasingly frustrated with not being able to figure out the direction of the story that I wanted to take with the film, I finally showed what I had to a colleague who actually had insisted that I do so. I think he was sick of hearing about how I was editing the film, but never seemed to be getting close to finishing it. After watching the cut, he offered so much insight and inspiration that I had the kind of breakthroughs that enabled me to finish editing a rough cut of the film within 2 weeks' time. Now, without allowing someone to see where I was with the film, who can say how much longer I would have been spinning my wheels on the project? By letting this colleague into my filmmaking process, it had unlocked something in me and my film that allowed me to make real, true progress on it. So, if you should need some unlocking of creativity or you're feeling stagnant in any way on your project, consider allowing someone to take a look at it. It might be just the thing you need to kickstart your creativity. Lastly, number 5, exercise. I mean, this one's a no-brainer, right? In fact, a recent study by the National Institute of Health indicated that a way to help any mental fog and fatigue is to participate in bouts of strenuous activity. For years, I was a runner. I'm now getting a bit more into biking, actually. And I can't tell you how many times after a long day of working, I'd go out for a run to reinvigorate the body and mind. Oftentimes, the answers to some mental block, maybe that I'd had about work or a life issue that I was having, this mental block would suddenly open up for me. Or maybe a creative solution to a filmmaking challenge that I was up against, it would come to me. The thing is, if we're too sedentary in our lives, again, especially true for the editors amongst us, we can become too accustomed to one set of thought patterns. It makes it very difficult to navigate in a creative fashion when we get tied to only one way of thinking. Now, this is not just me saying, hey, it's healthy and good for you to exercise. Physical activity can truly help unleash the creative juices. All right, so those are 5 ways to increase your filmmaking creativity. Remember, you can always go to the show notes for this episode by going to thedocumentarylife.com. And within those show notes, I'll actually write these out so you can see what they look like on paper, if you will. Now, I also imagine that you may have some of your own ways to increase creativity, and we would love to hear about them. So please send me an email at chris@barangfilms.com. That's Chris, CHRIS, at BARANGfilms.com. Or why not even consider sharing directly with the Doc Lifer community and posting in the Documentary Life Community Facebook group. If you're not already a member, it's free. Simply search for the Documentary Life community within Facebook and get started with the Doc Lifer community today. All right, next up, we talk with Dr. Pedram Shojai, aka the Urban Monk, and he's going to speak to you about so many things that anyone who is living a doc life can truly relate to. Can't wait for you to hear the conversation, and it is just around the corner. There are plenty of places online to learn how to do things like split the audio signals coming into your camera, or how to animate some of your still photos, or get some great tips on lighting your interview, many blogs, YouTube videos, and of course podcasts where you can quickly grab an answer to a tech-related question. But what if there was one place where you could learn from beginning to end how to make a documentary film and how to become a doc filmmaker, how to raise money and build an audience for your doc, how to form strategic partnerships and launch your doc out into the world, and perhaps even, if you can imagine, make some money from it? Well, there is such a place, and it's called the Documentary Academy. Steph and I took 2 years to build out this comprehensive resource that takes you step by step from story creation and pre-production all the way to post-production, launch, and distribution. The Academy takes you through your doc filmmaking journey as your most confident, active, strategic, creative, focused, and articulate self. It is a step-by-step guide to empowerment in the documentary filmmaking world. We know what we have in the Documentary Academy. Now it's up to you to discover what you have as a doc filmmaker. Do that today by heading over to thedocumentarylife.com/academy. Today I'm honored to welcome Dr. Pedram Shojai, also known as the urban monk to a lot of us. And we're going to be talking today a lot about this idea of maximizing your doc life. To give you some idea of Pedram's background, he was a Taoist monk for 4 years, a director of Oriental medicine, a Qigong master. He has studied Kung Fu and Tai Chi. He is the founder of well.org, and he is the author of books like The Urban Monk and The Art of Stopping Time. And he also, surprise, surprise, happens to be a doc filmmaker, including films like Vitality, Origins, and his latest film, Prosperity. Dr. Pedram Shojai, welcome to the Documentary Life. I'm looking forward to this conversation, man.
Hey, great to be here.
In order to give us some context of who Pedram Shojai is and what his journey was like into becoming a doc filmmaker, why don't you give us a brief idea what that journey was from living a monastery life in China to founding well.org and then to becoming a doc filmmaker?
Sure, I'll give you the abridged. Is
Yeah, exactly.
Came back from all the kind of mystical studies in the mountains, became doctor of Oriental medicine, seeing dozens of patients a day in Los Angeles, California. Just trying to make the world a better place, try to help people, and I just got to the point where I realized we were losing, we were losing the healthcare thing. We're sitting there trying to bandage guys up in the MASH unit while the war was raging on, and I realized it was a lifestyle war, not anything I could fix in my clinic. And I was tired of repeating myself, giving the same advice over and over again. How are you eating? How are you sleeping? That stuff does matter. And I realized we were losing the propaganda game. And at the time, having kind of stated goals to make the world a better place, I had to really look down the barrel of where my life was going and realized I wasn't going to win the game I was playing, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, you either start drinking or you change what you're doing. And so I realized that I had to, kind of fix that. I started getting into did some instructional DVD stuff with a group. And they're like, dude, we like your style. Like, you want to do a film together? And I said, sure, let's go. This sounds like fun. This seems like it can scale. And then we agreed to disagree because they thought it was about, technologies the government didn't want you to know about that can cure AIDS. And I'm like, I'm just trying to get people to eat vegetables. Like, we're missing this, right? Like, this isn't the problem. The problem isn't a conspiracy. The problem is just, it's a lack of awareness and some brainwashing that's happening on a pretty high level, from the companies that are profiting the most. And so we agreed to disagree. I ended up buying the rights to the film and said to myself, I don't know how to do this. Right? So, I started calling friends and being like, I got a ton of footage on my hands and I got a lot more I need to get help. And so that was back in 2010, 2009, 10. And just, by hook or by crook, I just, I figured it out, came out with my first film. And then I started talking to distributors and, I'm not from the space, right? So I'm like, wow, this is disgusting. Like, this is so parasitic. Why would I have spent my life savings on this passion project and just hand it over to this narcissist who represents a room full of lawyers? Don't really do anything other than just bundle your asset up with a bunch of others and
That's right.
Wish you luck and hopefully you get paid. So I started looking at what other people were doing online and was like, okay, I got it. I'm going to give the film away for free on the internet in exchange for an email. And the loops that I open through the film, I will have a lifestyle program that will, support their health and all the things that we talked about in the film that they could choose to buy after seeing my film for
Right.
free. And the 3 weeks later, I had 125,000 emails and mid six figures in revenue, and everyone's looking at me going, "Dude, jackpot!" I go, "Really?" Like, yeah. And so I started really working the documentary model, but in the freemium capacity, saying, "Look, I want to do this to help the world, anyways. Netflix isn't that exciting, so how do I get this in front of everybody and still make a living doing it?" And so that's how I ended up in this mess.
You've said a lot there in like 2 minutes that I think is going to speak directly to the hearts of so many of our listeners of the program. And well.org, when did this happen for you and how did it come to be?
Yeah, so it actually happened right around the time where my first film kind of came out and hit.
Right.
And I'm like, whoa, what the hell do I do with all this other footage?
Yeah.
Hundreds of hours, as you know, just sitting around on the chopping room floor. I mean, not anymore. It's just, hard disks.
That's right.
And right. But like, look, I got all this gold that didn't make it, and these are my babies. And so what I did is, a friend of mine was a domain broker at the time. He's like, "Look, I know you can't afford this because you just spent all your money on this film, but I'm gonna hold it for you until you can."
Oh,
And so
wow.
so I got well.org. Paid a pretty penny to him afterwards, but
Yeah.
the domain was perfect because I really wanted it to be the intersection of health, environment, and conscious capital, which is kind of what it evolved into. And then I started with lots of extra footage and B-roll and footage that we used and like kind of repurposed and blogged and all the stuff that I had to kind of figure out coming from a different world.
Right.
And it just started to pick up steam because our whole thing was like, you know what, there's enough BS out there,
Yeah,
right? And so
yeah.
like, look, we're gonna talk truth, and we're gonna represent media that is kind of going after big world issues. And there's a certain sector out there that's a growing sector that's starving for information along those lines. That's why documentaries are trending up right now. I mean,
Right.
documentaries are a segment that's doing really well because smart people don't want to watch the Kardashians. They don't want to watch the bullshit. And so we started speaking to people who give a shit and want to get activated to do something on the world that we all live in.
That's right, and God forbid you turn elsewhere than Netflix and Amazon. I mean, they certainly have their place for us, and doc filmmakers are very appreciative of that. We've had plenty of filmmakers who have had their films distributed on those platforms, but that's certainly not the only avenue for certainly the consumer, and then we doc filmmakers.
Yeah. And to that point, look, I've had films on Netflix. I
Right.
don't get the emails from the people who watch my film.
That's right.
So at the end of the day, you're out there hustling, trying to make another film, wondering who's going to give you the budget. Whereas if you had a direct connection with your audience and you had an email list, then hey, you're like, "Hey guys, my next film's out," right? It's that simple. And so I think that if you window it correctly and get a film on one of those platforms kind of later in life, it makes sense. But to just go straight, unless they're paying for the party, and every deal is different.
That's right.
I don't see it as a winning strategy for a documentary filmmaker who wants to actually keep doing this for a living.
Who want this to be a sustainable living. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'd like to read your mission statement from well.org, and I'd love to then hear how you think it applies in particular to the doc films that you're doing. The mission statement reads as follows: "We are committed to helping people help themselves, and in turn supporting their community and their world. Our mission is to revolutionize commerce and create a vehicle for positive change by bringing attention to people who are doing good work in our communities." Tell us a little bit about how that applies to the doc film work that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like following breadcrumbs, if you will. I mean, my first doc was like, look, you know what? The healthcare system ain't going to fix you, so step up, right? And when we realized that it was all the environmental toxins and all these other things that are added to the foods and all these things that are kind of suffocating our health, we followed those breadcrumbs. And it was like, okay, well, you don't have to buy that crap. So what does the world look like if you just buy things that make the world a better place? And really, it just became about personal empowerment. Everyone's looking for a hero. Everyone's looking for a guru. Everyone's looking for, the winning politician that's going to like come in and like sweep through and fix everything. And I think those days are over. I think we just need, billions of people stepping up and being like, enough's enough. We don't tolerate intolerance. We don't eat bullshit food and get sick and hope someone fixes us. And so it just became a platform for personal empowerment in a non-denominational, don't get weird kind of way, right? Just
right.
like, just get healthy, take care of yourself, and then be, a bastion of stability in your community and stand for the world by standing in the world.
There is a system of medicine that is failing us. It feeds off of sickness, and it's costing us more every year. More people arrive at its doorsteps daily as our lives become more hectic. We can't seem to slow down, and we throw more money at it, hoping it'll help. It is a model for sick care, where doctors get paid to treat illness, not to prevent it. It is just a broken system. There is a better way.
In Vitality, what was it that spoke to you about that film that you said, you know what, man, this is the first film I need to do. I need to make this film. And then maybe you can share what maybe a biggest surprise or learning curve was for you as a first-time doc maker.
Well, yeah, the learning curve was, I used to have hair. Let's see, we'll start there and go backwards, right?
You and me both, pal.
But what got me to go there was like, we all, we live in such a complicated world, and we live in a world where, between the news and the technology and all this stuff, the complexity keeps stacking. And so because we have complex problems, we're looking for complex solution sets to our complex problems. But the premise is, what if the remedy for complexity is actually some simplicity, right? So instead of talking about like the latest cofactors or epigenetic expressions and all the stuff that scientists like to sound smart about, it's like, why don't we just go back to the original concept of vitalism, if you will, and say, look, the body knows how to keep itself healthy if you give it the right ingredients and you kind of take care of balancing these four areas of diet, exercise, sleep, and mindset, right? And so we kind of created, kind of a visual. And look, it sucked because this is back in 2010, and it's my movies have gotten way better, but we get these graphics that are spinning spheres, if you will. And once your diet sphere is working, then once they're all spinning, then the vitality wheel starts to spin, and that's when you have health, right? And so simplifying it in that way and creating a framework for people to understand health in a way that doesn't make them feel kind of small and disempowered and like, oh shit, like who's the doctor I got to go to that's going to save me? Man, we've helped hundreds of thousands of people lose weight, turn around diabetes. I mean, all kinds of things that the medical system say, well, that's not, they don't listen. It's like, no, you talk over their heads and you talk
you
down
don't
to
listen.
them. Yeah, you don't listen. And it's a $1 trillion industry that's built on, it's why like Wall Street guys, use big words too, right? It's if it's too complicated, you're too stupid to understand. So give me your power, give me your money, and let me drive, right?
Exactly.
And that's bullshit, right? And so what we did is we just created a simplified message about personal health through empowerment and things that they need to do every day. And look, we cut it down to like 54 minutes. I mean, it's a quick get in, get out. Expose of like, what health really should be. And then we just give them a ton of resources and be like, no, go get it.
Did you see an audience for I want to say these films, but I'd like to hear in particular just because it's your first doc. Did you see an audience for Vitality before you started making it? And was your audience sort of long being built prior to this, whether it's through well.org or the Pedram Shojai brand? But probably not the last part, because you did the film first, right?
Yeah, I had no brand, right?
Yeah,
I had none of that happening. And so, but And now it's like we do all this like kind of sophisticated, analysis of audiences and trying to figure out, who these people are and what keeps them up at night and all that.
Yeah.
At that time, I didn't have it per se, but boy, did I have it, man. I had thousands of patients, man. I was on the bleeding edge of clinical care where these people would come to me like, help me, OB1, you're my only hope. And I'm just like, man, your chart is like 6 inches thick, and I got to like read this and figure out why everyone else failed you and what I got to, so I knew why people were suffering every single day. And so, I saw, when I started making this thing, especially like, all my 2-camera throws and all that, is like, I'm just looking at patients in my history that I'm talking to. And so you do all this market research, in filmmaking now, and we start looking at, what the, who's gonna, what's this gonna trend towards, and who's gonna share this, and who our coalition partners are, and you get cute. But at that time, man, it was just like I knew. I mean, when people come to me, they give me a chief complaint as a physician, right? They're complaining to me. They're telling me what's wrong.
Right.
So, and like, I don't care how good you are at surveying, it's how hard it is to get people to honestly, tell you what's wrong so that you can help them in like your filmmaking. So like, I had this distinct advantage of having thousands of people already kind of come in and cry to me about life. And I knew exactly what the problem was. And so, and then to kind of, follow up on the point that you made is no, I didn't have a list. So what I did was I made a movie that everyone else's audiences wanted to see. And then I created affiliate arrangements where, 50% of my $100, lifestyle program went straight back to the affiliates. And I went and drummed up a bunch of people in the health community to be like, hey, I made this film and it's going to really help you, kind of explain what's going on to the people in your audience. So I had, hundreds of thousands of people come in and, I got what is 125,000 emails in the first 3 weeks. Wow. I mean, that's a lot of people. It's like, that's a prop stadium full of people. Yeah. And now listen, talk, in online stuff, they talk about all this, like, these videos and indoctrination and all that. I just gave someone 54 minutes of a pure give of a film that I spent my life savings on, designed to help. And so not only have I inspired them and educated them, I've earned their trust. So, a few thousand of them, I don't know how many it was at this point. I got it, like those are old stats, but a few thousand of them were like, yeah, man, here's $100. Here's $200. I want the lifestyle program, right?
Exactly. Of course.
Yeah. And then you keep serving them and you keep serving them. And so it becomes this virtuous cycle where then I had money in the bank to fund my own next movie. I didn't have to take anyone's money and,
which is so brilliant. That's so brilliant for doc filmmakers, because that is such a rare occurrence that after the first film that we actually are able to put ourselves in a position financially to not have to depend on someone to fund the next film and maybe the next one. That's a rarity indeed.
And there's very little quiet money out there, right? Yeah. Like, there are a lot of people willing to, help you push their agenda and their cause, and you lose creative control. Yeah. And I didn't get into this to be a dancing monkey. You know what I mean? Like I needed to do what I needed to do. And this is my dharma. Like I just because I'm not in the monastery doesn't mean I'm not doing that work.
Indeed. I have some very good colleagues who probably will be listening to this and will appreciate those last couple sentences. I want to talk to you about, for our doc filmmaking audience, this idea of branding ourselves as artists. We often can really hesitate. We really can hesitate to sell ourselves and maybe to sell our films. Speak to that, Pedram, and speak to the importance of why we should be out there sort of humping it to get to a place where we have some sustainability, or we get to a place where we're selling our films so that we will have an audience for those films and for more films.
Here's a problem: is pretty much every artist friend I have, healers, artists, I mean, we're all kind of, in that same category, is we don't like accepting money for our art.
That's
and we
right.
don't like, you know what I mean? So it's this starving artist thing. And I had to face that because I realized that, what, either I'm going to stay up in the monastery, make piles of rocks and meditate on them, or come down here and play, in the big leagues.
Yeah.
And that stuff takes money, right? And so, what am I doing with the money? I'm not blowing it up my nose. I'm not driving Range Rovers. I'm investing it in helping more and more people. So I just had to get over that and just be like, all right, look, money's just another game. It's actually like money's a complete heist. I'm doing another film right now on just how the monetary system is completely rigged and designed to extract value out of people. And so, I'm looking at all this going, look, if you want to further your goals, then how can you make money in an ethical way that's not like, it's like, I think that patronage model sucks too. It's like begging people
couldn't
to
agree
money
more.
to
It's terrible.
Right. And so for me, I'm like, all right, so you've seen this, and if you're, suffering from low energy and you might have diabetes and you got these issues, then check out this amazing program we've put together with, these top medical doctors and wellness experts in the field. They're going to help you, X, Y, and Z. Right. And with it comes, 100 recipes and all these things, and we're here to help. And so it's like, you, again, like for the $100, I'm giving them $1,000 worth of value.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of like lean in and like kind of lay on that altar of service and charge what I need to charge to make the party go on. And and you know what happens is the audience sees it, right? They're
Mm,
like, oh, this guy, you know what? I like this guy. You know, this is cool.
that's right.
I get it.
Well,
So
and
it's
they see
about
some authenticity there. I mean, that's,
authenticity and transparency,
yeah,
right?
and
And so
transparency.
that's the model for the new economy, and that's where I really kind of finally found my comfort zone. Because like,
Wow.
I don't, none of us like that stuff, right? The people who like, and that's a problem. The people who do like that are running the country. They're like,
Yeah.
they're buying the lobbyists. They're they're the ones that are screwing it all up.
Yeah.
So it's like the sociopaths get to win because they understand that money is the ultimate scoreboard on the planet. And so, I've actually kind of done an about face in the last few years, gotten really into, like, we did our last film on conscious capitalism with all
Right.
the big, conscious capitalist companies. And I'm just like, yo, we need to make trillions of dollars
Yeah.
and take this shit back.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This
You're
is,
right.
this is bullshit. Like we're losing because the good people of the world want to like sing kumbaya while the
Mm,
bad people are like buying the land and taking the water and spilling oil everywhere. And so, you know what I mean? It's just it wasn't, my beliefs weren't furthering my mission, and I realized that I had to kind of step in and be much more responsible for my footprint on the planet, and that it included that if I'm going to say I'm going to make films that transform the world, then what the hell are they doing, right? Who's seeing them? Because if 8 people see my film, I might as well just go back to practice.
Oh, totally. It's always an option. I
Yep.
would like to read from the back of The Urban Monk, your book, The Urban Monk. And again, it's something that applies directly to the heart of us independent doc filmmakers. And it is, our world is an overwhelming place. Each day's commitments to career and family take everything we've got. And we struggle to focus on our health, relationships, and purpose in life. Technology brings endless information to our fingertips, but the one thing we really want, a sense of satisfaction and contentment, remains out of reach. We independent doc filmmakers, or doc lifers as we refer to ourselves here in the program, we live this struggle and these commitments on a daily basis. We're constantly doing what needs to be done to make ends meet. We're trying to raise funds for our films. We're juggling our family life, with our work and with our passion. Health, relationships, purpose in life, these are the things that often get neglected. So firstly, I'd like to ask you, Pedram, why is it critical for us, to take a step back and examine how we're living this insanely paced, neurotic, if you will, lifestyle for the passions that we have of doc filmmaking in this case?
Look, I'm on hiatus right now for a week or so because of the holiday and stuff, and then I'm back on the road, and I love being on the road. And I got young kids at home, so it sucks. Like just there's a huge price to pay for me to be away on campaign, right? I mean, I get smarter every single day I'm in production because I sit with genius people and ask them questions that I'd want to ask anyways,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And so if a project's worth doing, it's worth doing, then you just got to fill it out. And I think speaking to documentary filmmakers, and look, I've been around this world, but I didn't come from this world. So it's just, I get the kind of like outsider view in.
Yeah.
It's, everyone's struggling with this thing called money, but then the fat cats up top got the money and they kind of, they fund the crap, right? And so I feel that money flows to predictability.
Yeah.
And if you understand how to take your title and leverage it and own your IP and get the email lists and do all the things that are just kind of common sense now with the way the internet works, who cares if you're just one more tile on a Netflix feed that just like passes someone? You might get seen by 20,000 people randomly over a week when they feature it, and then what, right?
Right.
You still got to learn how to do coalition building and get your stuff in front of the people who are kind of aligned with your message. And when you do that, then you're not stressed about the money, and then the whole thing kind of makes business sense. And then there's the brass tacks of the whole damn thing, which is like, are you ordering salads or are you ordering chicken wings because you're on the road, right? Like I just can't afford to eat like my crew, and now my crew doesn't eat that way either, right? Right, because we're just like at the point where we're like, we're hearing too much smart stuff coming from like, top class doctors talking about right now we're doing a series on the microbiome. It's revolutionary. I'm like, wow, I would not feed that to the bad bacteria in my gut. And so, you start living it, and all of a sudden, you have less drama, you have more balance. I come home for the weekends as often as I can while I'm on tour, and everything just kind of works better
Mm.
when you're aligned with it. And for me, the other thing is, a lot of documentary films kind of cover injustice. They cover terrible things that are happening on the planet, and there's absolutely incredible value in that, right? But I've gotten to the point personally, and again, this is personal opinion,
Right.
is people are so tired of seeing
Inundated
bad
with it.
news and
Yeah,
inundated with that,
that's
that
right.
unless you have like some sort of about face where you're like, all right, yeah, this sucks and this is what we're going to do about it. Unless you could galvanize those emotions and kind of rally them into some sort of very simple and predictable action that would actually make the world a better place.
Mm.
Frankly, I think you just missed a free throw, right? You spent
Ah.
so much time building this beautiful piece of art just to keep pissing people off without giving them some way to channel that. People need to have some direction in some capacity to help take that energy, that emotion and that goodwill and plug it into something that's going to move the needle. And for me, then you want to track how that's moving the needle so that you can show that it's working, so that you can then continue to refine and iterate on that model, because then you could use information as a force for good, and you could use information as a way to kind of galvanize communities and get change, that the change that you want to see on the planet. You have the power to do so, if you do your film in a way that creates community and draws action.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly on so much of that, and that speaks to a lot of a lot of thoughts that I'm having lately in terms of really my mission as a doc filmmaker on this planet. But that being said, Pedram, and I know that you preface this with that this is your personal choice, man. This is the kind of films that you want to make, and there's very valid reasons for that. But how about I don't know, the other 90% of doc filmmakers who are not necessarily creating films maybe to create change. Perhaps they're simply creating films to tell a story, to shine a spotlight. A lot of the films that I do tend to be in developing countries. You mentioned Nepal. I've spent a bunch of time in Nepal and in Cambodia. And a lot of what I'm doing is trying to shine a light on a culture and maybe practices within cultures that people wouldn't necessarily have any clue about, if not for perhaps maybe seeing my film. Does that fit? Does that fall in line with that, or would you say, you know what,
Absolutely.
that's not enough?
Well, absolutely. But okay, so we could just workshop this out, because
Yeah,
listen, it's going to be different in every case, right?
totally,
But
totally.
let's say you're profiling out some culture in Nepal. So is the underlying theme that look at this beautiful way of life that is being kind of crowded out by
Mm,
modern encroachment?
mm,
Is this something that's just are we showing interpersonal relations in a way that we are not used to and accustomed to seeing in the West?
sure.
So it's just, for me, it's more like, okay, great. I love story. I mean, that's what we do. We're storytellers,
Right,
right?
right.
So, but then what's the theme? What's the meta theme? What are kind of the big pieces that could be moved on this chessboard to just make the world a slightly brighter place,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And so for me, that's just the filter I add on top of it. Not to say that's right. Again, I'm just a dude, right? But that's the filter I add on top of it, because I feel like we're at this kind of inflection point where, I mean, reality is being questioned. Like anything that's said in media is either, being called fake or not, depending on beliefs and all that. And so we have a tremendous responsibility as
Mm,
filmmakers to advocate for beauty and truth in a way that captures human spirit and gets them out of this polarity of like red team, blue team, or whatever the hell game they're playing,
yeah.
and sees people for who they are,
Mm,
sees situations for who they are. And again, I don't do like political movies. I'm not some stooge that's trying to fight a fight for somebody else.
right.
I just want to capture the human spirit and show how we're all connected in one, right? And so for me, I don't know if that answers the
It
question, but
does.
I would just look at the meta, kind of like the high level themes in what's happening in Nepal, and and then kind of bring that into kind of broader conversations into universities or something to keep the, it not only does it give you more play on your film, but it keeps a conversation stoked and it becomes something that furthers the conversation on the planet. And I feel like we're at a point in history where we need a little bit more of that. Does every film have to do that? Absolutely not, right? But that's again, that's my dharma, that's my calling, right? It's just, it's one guy's opinion. And again, it's about inspiring people about what to be. If you focus your cameras on the darkness, you're spreading darkness on the planet.
Yeah.
I think that we need to spread light and how do I say this? People are fucking zombies, man. And they're just trained to follow by the TV. And they're looking for someone they can trust to say, tell me what to do. And it's just this really yucky place that the human consciousness has gotten parked into. Yeah. And so we have a tremendous responsibility to inspire better behavior, inspire goodness, and we could do it, right? And we have the power to do it because we're working with a visual medium and we're playing with light. And so I think that there are unique opportunities in documentary filmmaking that I think a lot of people look past because there's just so much shit on TV. Yeah. And the answer there is don't make shit. Right? Yeah. Make something beautiful and make something that helps people and inspiring. And of course, that's what everyone's trying to do. And that's why I don't take money from outside, entity funders, right? Like, because I don't want someone to tell me what kind of shit to make. I want to follow the story.
Pedram, as we move towards wrapping up, what I'd like to do is I'm going to throw out a few topics. If you could give an actionable item or two that we can be maybe applying today or pretty damn soon, that would be super helpful. And one of the first topics, and this is a little bit of self-indulgence on my part, I'll readily admit that, I'm a big meditator. I'm a big proponent of meditation. For those who don't do this, Pedram, tell us briefly of the value, maybe even in scientific terms, of a meditation practice and how you feel it might benefit a creative like a doc filmmaker.
So we have studies now that show meditation helps suppress inflammatory gene expression. We know meditation helps empower the prefrontal cortex to help make better decisions, moral decisions, saying no to the cheesecake, all the kind of, temptations that show up on the road. It helps calm the mind. It moves us from sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous system, which gets us into rest and digest versus fight or flight. All that cute science stuff is coming around. But look, man, and you know this because I'm preaching to the choir right now, meditation just makes you better. It gets you to be present. Every mistake you make on the road, I'm burning $10,000, $20,000 a day on production right now, right? Every mistake is a costly mistake, right? And so it helps you be better. It sharpens your knife. It helps you be focused. And when you have the eyes of a meditator and you kind of come across the talent and you could connect with them heart to heart in a way that's super pure and human, that's when the magic happens on the screen too. Like I always meditate before my interviews because it allows me to elicit such better response from the people that we're interviewing. And it helps me tap into the deeper, juicier stuff that actually, leads to great content.
Yeah. Money's a big thing. It's a struggle for a lot of artists. It's certainly a struggle or a challenge for many doc filmmakers. What's an actionable item that we can take away with how can we get right with money?
Yeah, well, first of all, don't spend more than you make, right? The basics is, tighten the budget and get creative so that you don't get over your skis because, having money, having bills that you can't pay is the worst stress, right? And then from there, look, there's a lot of creative ways to leverage money, but I'm not and again, this is my orientation.
That's right.
I don't go knocking on the door of the Annenberg Foundation or any of these guys trying to get some stupid grant that's going to take 6 years to maybe get, right? I start working with people, making creative deals and being like, look, let's do matching funds here. Let's do this. Let me figure out a way to sell this on the back end and do like an affiliate deal. There's a lot. Once you understand the flow of money, there's, Garrett Gunderson, who is a friend of mine, is, a wealth management guy. There's different kinds of capital. There's financial capital, obviously, like money, but then there's intellectual capital, and then there's also human capital, and all these things like relationship capital. So I could leverage relationships to then create a win for somebody who then owes me a favor that ends up being a dude that's like, here, dude, no problem, man. Here, we're not going to charge you rental on these cameras. Like you hooked us up.
Right. It's so applicable in filmmaking.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And like, look, everyone understands that we're trying to make art, and everyone wants to help the good guy, and everyone's stuck doing wedding videos or whatever the fuck they're doing, trying to, pay for the lifestyle thing, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, dude, I'm doing this thing trying to save whales or talk about, genocide in a positive way, and
Yeah.
and use relationships in a way that can kind of help benefit other people instead of begging and being like, because I'm doing this bleeding heart thing, you should give me free shit.
That's right.
That's not weird. That's weird, right? That's transactional and weird.
Yeah.
Whereas like, I'm doing this thing, how can help, and how can I help you, right? And really lean in on being, useful and helpful to the people in your world, and finding ways to kind of connect people that adds and stacks value.
Mm.
It comes around. It really does.
It does. It does. Something else that sometimes is awful hard to come by as an independent doc filmmaker or a freelancer, or a creative, maybe with families, maybe juggling jobs and certainly doing the passion work. Something that's hard to come by is sleep. Why is sleep so damn important, Pedram, and what can we do to better it?
Well, first of all, if you're not sleeping, you're not going to be creative no matter how good you think you're being, right? Like, that's where the juicy stuff happens.
Oh yeah, man. And working in the film industry, it's like, you're going to be out for 12 to 15 hours, and burning the midnight oil has always, I felt like, fueled me, right? I felt like this is what I have to do. I have to be working all hours if I want to live and if I want to pursue my passions. And it definitely caught up with me at some point, but please continue.
Yeah, and so like, some of your best thinking is done on a mountain bike or hiking a trail.
Oh yeah.
And so there are things that you can do that help you, keep the weight down and keep your blood flowing, and also help you get better sleep. Drinking coffee all day and getting cracked out isn't necessarily the answer, right? And so I personally have switched my whole crew to a powder that I formulated that has like 25 milligrams of guayusa, which is
wow.
a Amazonian tea leaf, and everyone's just so much calmer. They're not getting those like coffee jitters. They're not like running to the toilet all the time. They're not, looking for sugar as soon as the coffee crash comes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, kind of general lifestyle things that you can do that are super applicable. But man, here's the thing, like, more isn't necessarily better.
Yeah.
Right? And if you got a 9 to 5 and you got to come home and, there's kids and, householder responsibilities, and you're just sitting there just getting pissed off at everyone and everything because they're all crowding out the time for your passion project, which you never have time for. And then you cheat yourself with sleep and all that. I don't think that that's a sustainable burn rate either, right? If you got to keep that 9 to 5, then tighten up your money and start saving some more, and then hire people to help you with the project, or, keep the 9 to 5 and then, work your way into like a sabbatical or a hiatus where you can then take a dedicated week and just go, buzz off to some, mountain cabin or something and just grind through it. But, just thinking about it and stressing about it, but not doing it, but feeling like shit because you're not getting to it and hating your job and resenting your kids for banging on the door when you're trying to do it when they want your attention.
Oh yeah.
I don't think that's not a sustainable model either. And that doesn't lead to balanced lives. And I think a lot of, documentary filmmakers get stuck there. And, then they're like, how much does a divorce cost? What is it? What's that story that Cat Stevens sang about, right? Like, there's a lot of bullshit that happens when you neglect your family, trying to save the world. So, you gotta, find a little bit better balance. And look, it might take another year and a half to make the film. That's fine. Do it right, and don't break your family, break your back, and break the bank doing it.
We've been speaking with Dr. Pedram Shojai, also known as the Urban Monk. His book is The Urban Monk, and his latest film is Prosperity. He is the founder of well.org. Man, what an incredible conversation this has been. Pedram, any final thoughts for us doc filmmakers?
Yeah, I'd have to say, listen, we all have a tremendous responsibility. Nothing is worth saying unless it's worth saying. No image is worth capturing unless it's worth capturing. So I personally, I think less is more. And I think finding that balance in our lives and really tapping into the purpose of why we're doing what we're doing, then allows us to have the strength and the resilience, and the creativity to make the project happen. My first project, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I worked relationships to the point where I got a film done, and it set me on my path. But I had to slow down because I was getting really frustrated, kind of banging my head against the wall, trying to do something I didn't understand and didn't have a budget to finish, right? And so, stepping back and meditating and doing the things that I know better that I should have been doing anyways,
Yeah, right.
actually gave me the clarity to, kill some of those babies and make the film a lot simpler of a film.
Oh, yeah.
And I ended up, doing tremendously well. And that one was okay. But, after that, I mean, my film started making millions of dollars and doing really well. And I never gave them to a distributor until I was done with them, right? But I had to take the nexus of control. I wasn't waiting for some jackass to take my title and click my heels together and hopefully magic happened. You got to own it. You got to own it. It's your project, so don't just sign away your rights.
Pedram, this conversation has exceeded any and all expectations that I could have possibly had. You were an absolute perfect guest for the documentary life in many, many ways. Thank you so much for being on the program today.
Man, thanks for doing this. I love the fact that you got a voice in this space, and I love documentary filmmakers. They're the people I like having drinks with, at the bar and just talking about the life that we live. And look, if you're listening to this right now, keep it up. You're in a great space, and I promise you, dockies are here to stay, and they're going to grow. So you're actually on the Mayflower. Just understand that if the water's choppy, you're on the Mayflower. This is a form of media that is absolutely going to be crushing it, I think, in the next 10 years.
Amen, brother. Thanks again for being on the show. Let's get you on again sometime.
Happy to. Thank you.
Don't forget, we'd love to have you join us in the Documentary Academy. Come and take a look at how we can help you make your best documentary film at thedocumentarylife.com/academy. That's thedocumentarylife.com/academy. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon. Thanks again for listening to the show, and remember to like and subscribe to this channel. Also, remember, for any of the URLs that may or may not be outdated and you want to get the most up-to-date information, perhaps for the documentary filmmaking courses, for the blog, for other episodes, just go ahead and check in the show notes below on this YouTube page, and that'll give you the correct URLs to use. Thanks again. Have a great day.